Let's give it a second. Please come to order for the special meeting of Glendale Economic Development Corporation. And may we have roll call, I guess, for the July 8th meeting, special meeting of Glendale City Council. May we have roll call, please?
Council members: Friedman.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Hero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Sinanian.
Here. May we have the report?
The agenda for the July 8th, 2014 special public meeting of the City Council was posted on Thursday, July 3rd, 2014 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. First item on the agenda is Mayor's commendations to the cruise night sponsors.
Okay. Mr. Bolanikian.
Good afternoon, Mayor Sinanian, members of the council, city staff. My name is Onik Bolanikian, Community Services Manager for the Community Services Parks Department. I know I mentioned this a few meetings ago. Cruise night will be held July 19th on Brand between 5:30 and 10:30. This year we'll have a first-time ever fireworks show. Entertainment will include the Kingsmen celebrating the 50th anniversary of Louie Louie and Abbey Road, which is a Beatles tribute band. Today I'd like to thank and acknowledge Downtown Glendale Association as a naming sponsor and Brand Boulevard of Cars as a presented by sponsor. It's because of their donations, our community sponsorships and corporate sponsorships, that it's the second year that Cruise Night is being held. So I'd like to welcome, invite Mr. Rick Lemo from Downtown Glendale Association and Ms. Shannon Boggs from Brand Boulevard of Cars to accept the mayor's commendation.
Hello.
Hello.
Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. I'm representing Shannon Boggs, representing the Brand Boulevard of Cars. And we just wanted to say we are so proud to sponsor this event. Obviously, we kind of have classic cars without them first being new. And so that's the reason we get a lot of that. Like, why are you guys here? This is a classic car show. And so we just want to say, and if you buy a car on the Brand Boulevard of Cars, all of that tax money goes to more fire people and policemen for safety of our pedestrians. So it all goes back. So come out. It'll be a great event. Sign up for all of our giveaways. And thank you so much for this.
Thank you. Mr. Lemo?
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and staff. It gives me great pride to be able to represent the Downtown Glendale Association. For those of you who may remember, in years past, the Downtown Merchants Association received great help to continue our work from the old redevelopment department, and now we're able to sort of give back a little bit. This year, our city staff came up with one addition that we're really excited about. We're going to have fireworks this year, and so we think it's a great way to reward people who live in Glendale by having a great day out, but it's also a great way to brag about us all over the Southland and get more and more people to come here. So we like the opportunity to participate in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sponsoring this event and year after year and being a part of Glendale. We love you, and hopefully your support is a reflection of your love for the city of Glendale. And I have two commendations. I'll read them because I know everyone's dying to hear what the commendation says. Presented to the Brand Boulevard of Cars 2014 Glendale Cruise Night. On behalf of the City of Glendale and the City Council, I would like to express my sincere appreciation for your presented by sponsorship of the 2014 Glendale Cruise Night. Your commitment and support to keep this event alive and thriving is exemplary. Congratulations on being part of the 21st Annual Glendale Cruise Night. Mr. Quintero, this will probably be the last commendation.
This will be the last commendation I'll be handing out. And I'm glad it's not only to the organization that, as was mentioned, brings in all kinds of tax income to the city, also supplies an incredible amount of jobs, both mechanics, sales, all of the work done with DMV, etc. But I love this cruise night. I remember the first year that we put it together, and it's grown. It's become a bigger event every year. So the restaurants are always packed, and it's just a wonderful event. I'm looking forward to being there, and also looking at the Harley-Davidson dealership that brings in all of their latest Harleys.
Great.
can I just point out one more thing?
Sure.
If you look at this year's cruise night brochure, our city staff was able to find a car that is an award-winning car from a Glendale resident
Oh,
on the
excellent.
cruise night.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lemo, don't go away. Yeah. Presented to Downtown Glendale Association, 2014 Glendale Cruise Night. On behalf of the City of Glendale and the City Council, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation for your naming sponsorship of the 2014 Glendale Cruise Night. Your commitment and support to keep this event alive and thriving is exemplary. Congratulations on being part of the 21st Annual Glendale Cruise Night.
Appreciate all your hard work. Our association.
Thank you.
What's next?
Next is approval of minutes of joint city council and housing authority and joint city council and successor agency meetings and special city council meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Do we need a vote on this?
On the minutes?
Yeah.
No.
No. Without objections, the minutes are admitted as submitted. What's next?
3 is a public hearing. Director of Community Development regarding proposed 180-unit multifamily residential and mixed-use development to be located at 515 West Broadway. 3A is a motion approving Stage 1 design review subject to comments and conditions of approval.
Mr. Hagan? Oh, yes. Mr. Ochoa?
Surely, as I bring up our senior planner, Kristen Asp, will give you the profile on this Stage 1 review for this project. Let me just introduce it by saying that the 1.78 acre parcel that exists there at the northwest corner of Pacific and Broadway is something of a tweener site. It is too big for some uses, too small for others. It's somewhere between the San Fernando Road corridor. In fact, it's part of that older redevelopment project area, but not part of downtown. So it sits out there as an island and really as a relic of the 1980s and 90s big box retail dynamic. And now that Office Depot is gone, and that is no longer sustainable in that current configuration, we are pleased to bring you an interesting project that would be a unique investment in this location, something of a beacon at this point in the community. So with that, let me have Kristen walk you through the project, and then she can introduce the development team.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. American General Design is requesting approval of a Stage 1 conceptual design review for a mixed-use project at 515 West Broadway. As the city manager said, the project site is located at the northwest corner of Pacific Avenue and Broadway within the former San Fernando Road Corridor Redevelopment Project area and is zoned SFMU. The 1.7 acre site consists of 9 parcels and is developed with a single-story retail store, Office Depot, with the associated large surface parking lot, and a 2-story apartment building and garage facing Kenilworth Avenue. The proposed project is a 5-story mixed-use building with approximately 18,200 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor and 180 multifamily residential units above surrounding a central courtyard. The building is tallest at 5 stories starting at Broadway and then steps down towards the north to 4 and 3 stories adjacent to the multifamily zone properties along Wilson Avenue. The developer plans to request a density bonus for the project pursuant to SB 1818, and I do need to make a correction to the percent of affordability as stated in the staff report. The developer plans to provide 5%, not 11%, for very low-income households, therefore qualifying the developer for 1 concession. In this case, the developer is requesting an increase in the height stories for the project to 65 feet, 5 stories, where 60 feet, 4 stories are permitted.
So 5% are how many units?
180 units,
No, 5% of 180, so how many is that?
approximately 9.
Thank you.
Formal consideration of this request would be considered at the Stage 2 design submittal. Additionally, the code requires 313 parking spaces. The project will provide 330. located in a single-level underground parking structure at the ground floor, underground parking structure and at the ground floor. 2 vehicular ingress-egress points are proposed, one along Pacific Avenue and one along Broadway that would access the at-grade parking level, and access to the subterranean parking will be provided from Kenilworth Avenue. Staff recommends approval of the Stage 1 conceptual design review with direction to the applicant to further refine the project consistent with comments from the city's senior urban designer. And this concludes staff presentation. I'd like to turn the rest of it over to the project team, who will go into the project design in more detail.
Okay, let's open the public hearing. Mr. Khan? How much time do you need?
15 minutes should be sufficient.
Is that for you alone or for the
For our team.
For your team. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. My name is Rodney Kahn. My offices are located on Brand Boulevard here in the city of Glendale. Today we are requesting a Stage 1 conceptual design review approval. I'd like to start off my part of the presentation by speaking a little bit about the developer of the project and then talk about the site and the context of the area for the project. Through his companies, Patrick Chirachian is the owner, he's the architect, he's the developer, and he's the builder of this project. Patrick is a longtime Glendale resident. He's having lived in our city for the past 30 years. His family is based in Glendale, and they have deep roots in our community. Patrick is very involved in all the aspects of this project. The quality, his reputation is very important to him, and this project is very important to him. Our site is approximately 1.8 acres, and as pointed out, there is an existing large box building on it. The building's approximately 25,000 square feet. It is obsolete in use. It is about 25 feet in height, and currently Office Depot occupies it. As you can see from the image that's up on the screen, we also have a very large expanse, paved parking area with little to no landscaping in the parking. That will all change. This project will substantially improve this neighborhood in this area. Mr. Ochoa talked about the location in this site being somewhat barren and this needing an anchor, this area being between the Galleria, the Americana to the east, and to the west, San Fernando Road. This project as designed will be that anchor. It will have a commercial component to it, which our architect will elaborate, which will bring in a restaurant to the corner of Pacific and Broadway, and also introduce retail uses on the ground floor that will serve the area, the residents, and the neighborhood. Last part of my comments, as you know, and as we've learned from the hearings before ours, that affordable housing is a much-needed commodity here in the city of Glendale. And as staff mentioned, we are providing 5% of our units for very low-income residents of our city. This will be at absolutely no cost to the city of Glendale. I'd like to conclude my remarks, bring up our architect, Kip Dixon, to walk you through the design of the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon?
Good afternoon, folks. Pleasure to be here. Before I start, one of the things that I'd kind of like to point out is that how unique it is in terms of the relationship that Rodney just spoke about, in terms of having a developer, the architect, and the construction all under one umbrella. And this is the way that we've been working now for some 10 years. Our familiarity with this site, or at least mine, started with this 10 years ago when I first met Patrick and started working with him on various projects. Our office for 23 years was essentially right across the street here at 600 Broadway. So we've seen this site for quite some time in terms of knowing the neighborhood. Flip back to the first shot, talk a little bit in terms of the overall idea for the project. All of these projects go through a long process in terms of the development and adjustments within it in terms of trying to make it fit with the local context as well as the development goals for the project. And one of the things that we really noticed on this site was the opportunity in terms of the development of an anchor and imagery that would be at the corner of Broadway and Pacific. And we really look at this end of the project as being much more in terms of the commercial development, and we'll speak a little bit more in terms of the residential development that's a little further down the block. Just a little bit of background information in terms of what we were talking about earlier is that the calculations lead us to 188 units, and in this particular configuration, we would be allowed a 20% bonus, but we're actually using just about 15% of that bonus. The additional 8 units we found would make it quite difficult for us to step the mass of the building adjacent to the properties that are on the north of us. So we've eliminated those units from the project. Project program, you can see in terms of the overall gross area of the building being a little over 350,000 square feet, and unit count as it works its way through, and I'll show you a little bit more detail on this. In terms of the number of parking spaces as spoken by staff, we're required to have 113, and we're going to be looking at providing 330 spaces. Unit count that we're looking at is 62 bedroom units, and one of the things to take note of is that in all of our developments we tend to go to a higher standard and higher quality in terms of the value of the property, and we're looking at those 2 bedroom units being as high as 1,600 square feet. 1 bedroom units that go throughout 113, there's a number of different configurations, and those average around 900 square feet. The smallest of 1 or 2 of the 1 bedrooms are in the area of around 750, with the bulk of them being at about 850, which is generally we find to be about the size of 2 bedroom units for most other competitive developments of this type. The other thing that take a look at is in terms of the open space that's being provided. We're providing in excess of the amount of open space. Roughly 2/3 of an acre in terms of open space on the site has been incorporated within this. And we find that's important in terms of the community, but specifically in terms of the quality of life for the individuals that would be purchasing or renting these units. Talk a little bit about our philosophy in terms of sustainability and the aspects that are in this particular project. First and foremost, to talk about it in terms of mixed-use development. A lot of our background is in transit-oriented development. We're doing that in downtown Los Angeles as well as Pasadena. And the idea in terms of live, work, and proximity to mass transit is something that's important. While we don't have a train line here, we are along a major transportation in terms of bus corridor along Broadway. Looking at the opportunity in terms of live-work opportunities, in particular, I'll talk about some units that are along Kenilworth Street that are accessed from the ground floor. All of the building, we talk about sun control and solar aspects of the building. Primarily, the building has been elongated along an east-west axis, which is its kind of most optimal. Looking at deep recesses to shade glass on virtually all sides of the building in terms of where we have the majority of our glass. All glazing to be thermal pane, thermally broken, double pane glazing. We provide sun shading in various places where it's optimal to do that. And we look at virtually everything that we do in terms of drought-tolerant California natives and the reuse in terms of gray water systems that go into irrigation. Use of recyclable materials. I know it's very common to see construction in wood construction, but wood is actually a renewable resource and is something that is recyclable. And a lot of the lumber that we're using within our current construction are made up of small pieces. They're assembled, manufactured lumber, and it comes from recycled materials. We're also looking at using metal paneling that is a recyclable material. One other element is that we're looking at the development of outdoor gardening plots on the roof for the residents within this to take advantage as much as we can of the abundant sunlight that's there and space that would be potential for growing vegetables, things of that nature. A little bit in terms of the proximity, as it was discussed, it is a little bit of a tweener site. This first circle is a 6-minute walk from the proposed property, and it's 12 minutes then on down to the Galleria. And so in many ways, we see this property as being just as much kind of part of the downtown development is going on as we do in terms of the San Fernando Road qualities. Talk a little bit about the landscaping that we're looking at. This is a courtyard space, and one of the things that we've really worked at is in terms of the setbacks, in terms of the adjacent properties. Currently, the zoning requires us to have no setbacks to those adjacent properties, and we've pulled the lowest level 5 feet away and provided a landscape buffer. But then further, we've started to pull the building back, and as we talked about, the lack of units, or the 8 units, have principally come out of the design in terms of this area. We go anywhere from 9 to 10 foot, 21 feet, and as much as 40 feet in terms of the distance, and we have another image that will show that.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What is on that side?
Excuse me?
What are the buildings on that side?
Buildings, I'll show you an image in just a second that talks about them. They range everywhere from single-family residences where the garage is up against the back of this to rather significant multifamily residences back up against it.
So all the single-family residents have the garages between
To the back.
building and you?
Right. This slide's a little dark, but you can see that we have a garage location, and we have the profile in terms of the adjacent housing here. So we go a little bit further back into the site. You can see the height of one of the multifamily residents. Then we go another block, or not a block, another couple of lots, and this is the next multifamily residential. And then this actually indicates what the zoning envelope for those properties are now, should any of those properties be redeveloped. And you can see from here, we begin to step the building back all the way up until we get back up to the courtyard portion of the building. And that was important for us, not only in terms of providing outdoor space for our residents, lovely views up to the mountains, but in terms of trying to provide sun access back to the back of those units as much as possible. The view of the corner coming down Pacific in terms of the driveway unit, and you can begin to see some of the development up at the top and the step back. And talk a little bit about how the ground floor plan is organized within this. Is that we're actually looking at the commercial entrance coming in off Pacific. This is entry in only, will not be exiting back out onto Pacific. We understand the traffic constraints that are along Pacific. We have in and out both off of Broadway, down adjacent to where the residential portion of this is. See the commercial uses that wrap around, 118 parking spaces, and then a courtyard that goes through in terms of providing access from the parking back on out to the street in terms of each one of these retail components. Double check. One of the things I think that is interesting that was able to be achieved on this site is that many developments we see have very token kinds of depth in terms of retail space along the streets. And in this particular case, we've got everything from 45 feet and down to, say, 30 feet. But we find these to be depths that are rather appropriate and are very leasable and sustainable economically in terms of tenants that would come in. And we're really looking at the corner of this in terms of having a major tenant that would come in terms of a restaurant cafe space with outdoor dining that we can see in the images. talk a little bit about our attitude along Kenilworth Street. Kenilworth is where we have our access down to the residential. So the residential access parking is completely segregated from the commercial. And we have the development of 4 live-work units that are accessed directly off of the street along Kenilworth. We didn't feel that it was appropriate with the convalescent hospital and other residential uses to have commercial activities along Kenilworth. So this worked out well for us in terms of our design strategies. Parking down below, parking access up into the units from 2 distinct locations opposite sides of the site, and ramp that goes back up to grade. One of the things that staff asked us to look at is that currently there's a right turn magazine at the corner of Pacific and Broadway, and one of the things that we have investigated is whether or not there's the possibility in terms of bringing out, filling that and creating a courtyard that gives a little greater emphasis in terms of the commercial development that would happen at the corner. Elevations of the building. Building is rather long, and we really worked in terms of the slope of the site to develop a pedestrian character all the way along the face of the building. Lots of recess and depth.
How much more time do you have?
Like 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 more minutes.
Walk you around the building elevation, where we've tried to really work in terms of having pedestrian scale at the base and then lightening the top of the building. And along the back, I think it's significant to look at the back elevation of the building and understand that where we have the landscaping, we've not only got California natives that have been developed along here, but that we've got a green wall that is going to go the entire length on the back of the parking structure in terms of trying to soften that form. Kenilworth elevation. And then just a quick note in terms of the materials. Since we do our own development, design, and construction, the quality of the buildings is very important to us, and the variety of the materials that we put into the projects are important to us. Of significance is that we tend not to use vinyl-clad windows or windows and things that are very flat along the surface. We like to recess the windows back where we get lots of shadow and texture depth within the project, and this illustrates where some of the potential material selections will go. Talk just very briefly in terms of the interior courtyard. Interior courtyard throughout the building activated in terms of a swimming area, cabana and lounge space, barbecue space, and then a seating and fire pit area that is at the other end of this. And all of this actually culminates in terms of the community space at this floor, which look back out down to downtown. California natives, drought-tolerant landscaping throughout. That's a view in terms of the courtyard.
Can I ask a question about your landscaping?
Certainly.
So why the palm trees? Why not something that provides some shade and something that provides some blockage so that people aren't looking from one window straight across into the next window?
Shade is not necessarily that big of an issue for us from the standpoint that this winds up being fairly narrow configuration. And what we've done is we've really located our planting to be along this side in species that can tolerate the shade. So we've got plenty of shade that really principally happens across this side, so we get double that. If we were to use and it's definitely a possibility that we could look at a different species that leafs out more, but I think in this particular case, I think that what we prefer to have is less ground shade and have something vertical in the space, which is going to help to break up the length of the space.
Well, I just think you should consider something that provides some greenery, because the palm trees don't. They're just like a telephone pole.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have your units right across from each other, so you don't really have any blockage from someone looking out one window. They'll look right into the window that's across from them. It's not very far. And it might soften your space to have some foliage when people look up, or look through that space. So something to think about.
Okay. Well, we could certainly consider deciduous planting that would allow us to get shade in the summertime, but then would allow to maximize in terms of the light in the summer.
Are you going to be able to plant? What's the depth of the planter box for you?
Fortunately, we're in pretty good shape because we've got the parking deck below us, and we've actually got space. We've actually got space for the swimming pool to have depth. So we're probably looking at a planter box that's going to be at least 4 feet, plus if we come up above that, another foot or so around it. So we'll probably be looking at a 5-foot root ball at least. Other questions I'd be happy to answer.
No questions? Thank you. Next speaker is Armand Grigorian, followed by Pierre Chirachyan.
Mayor,
Mr. Grigorian, is 3 minutes sufficient?
More than enough.
Great.
My name is Armand Grigorian, Executive Director of Homeland Glendale Chapter. I appear here before you today in support of a mixed-use development plan on 4511 North Pacific Boulevard because Patrick Chirachyan, the mastermind behind the project, has been a member of our organization since inception in 1979. The main reason I'm here today is to talk about Patrick's character, although the project itself has a lot to say about it and a lot of good things, but I am going to mainly talk about Mr. Chirachyan, which began his involvement with Homenetmen as a scout and thereafter advanced through the ranks in becoming a scoutmaster and the leader of our explorer troops. Over the years, he has remained active in Homenetmen, both locally in Glendale and also by serving on various committees of the Homenetmen Regional Board. Not only has Patrick volunteered his time, he has also been financially supportive of these various activities organized by our organization for the youth. Most recently, he was instrumental in establishing the Chirachyan Scholarship, which provides financial aid to worthy scouts and athletes entering college and universities. In short, Mr. Chirachyan has been and remains an active member of Glendale community for the past 35 years. We are excited and encouraged to see Mr. Chirachyan return back to Glendale and continue to invest in the city growth. We are confident that the Vesta project will help boost the city's economy, create new employment opportunities for Glendale residents and subcontractors, attract new residents, and generate additional revenue for the city. Therefore, I strongly urge the City Council approve and support the project. I just need to add something. I had my office there in that location from 1984 to 1997, across the street from that building. And believe me, that area needs improvement, and this will be a great addition to that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grigorian. Pierre Chirachyan? You're good. Okay. Please, will you fill a card? And you know what? Just come and speak, and then you'll fill a card later.
I'm sorry, this is my son.
It's okay.
I just got this letter, and I'm the
You have 3 minutes. That's okay.
okay. I'm the one of the people that they live behind this building that they're gonna.
Can you please state your name?
My name is Colette Callis, and I live on 512 West Wilson Avenue.
Thank you.
So, this was a disaster for us as a family and as a people that are living in that area. Some of the people may wanted to come, but it was maybe such a short notice for us to know about it and to ask about it. But I think it's going to affect us very much because it's totally a residential area. And one of, like my house and my room is right there, and we have like a yard there, and we're going to lose the privacy of our house. I'm a person that work from the house, so I don't know how much they're going to do this drilling and digging and stuff like that. And the value of our house, because since I bought this house, that was totally an empty area that we have nobody behind us. So I think for us it's going to be a disaster. I'm not against the building. I know, yes, it's maybe need improvement, but it's going to affect us. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have 2 additional speakers. Ida Norhadian. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Aida Norhadian. We own a shopping center just across from the project. I have just a question. There is a small island for the parking for the cars that you come from the north to south. What happened to that island? What are you proposing for that?
Is that the only question that you have? Or do you
Yes,
have any
because
more comments? Then
the way I'm seeing that they're converting that to a sitting area, is that, or am I mistaken?
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
I just want you to, if that's the only thing that you have to
Yes.
say, the question, we'll have the developer respond to the question, but is there anything else you'd like to say?
Because that has been an issue in past from the Public Works. They came to us and they were discussing of some changes that will affect our shopping center, and this is a very small center, and for us it's very important to see how traffic-wise how that is going to be solved.
Okay, great, thank you. Can we have someone respond to that question?
I think just generally should the idea of readjusting or realigning that small island, we always kind of refer to it as a pork chop based on its shape, to either pull that in so you still have a right-hand turn lane, but that it would allow for an expansion of that plaza as public space, is something that we are asking the developer to explore as they move from phase 1 to phase 2 if the council were in fact to approve it today. So the short answer to the woman's question is that that is being considered, the realignment's being considered, but that would come back to you and to her in stage 2.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just add to that, anybody is interested, go up to Montrose and look at the corner of Verdugo and Honolulu, where we're doing almost exactly the same thing, that location, to make it more efficient, much more safe, and eliminate a cut-through where it's not good for traffic regulations. It'll look much better when it's done. It's under construction right now.
So I think the sense that I'm getting is, first of all, it's not in front of us right now, but there will be a solution. A solution is possible that will not impact businesses or individuals, as Ms. Norhadian.
That's correct, sir. If the traffic engineers find that, as Mr. Weaver indicates, that there is a better solution there that would allow for the enlargement of that plaza area as a public kind of pivot point, a hub, then we can move in that direction if we can get the developer to do that at their cost. But if that doesn't work for traffic, then it's kind of the Hippocratic oath of first do no harm.
Okay. Thank you. Next speaker is Cheryl Gillum. I hope I pronounced that correctly. State your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Cheryl Gillum. And the other question?
You have 3 minutes.
I have 3 minutes. I only have one question or one comment. As a point of reference, all of the houses, garages do not go up to the back of the property line that he was talking about. Our house, the garage, probably has 40 feet of property, or 25, 30 feet of property behind the garage, up to the property line. Our lots are one of the larger lots in this proposed development. And of course, I think any of us that have a house that back up to it are worrying about what kind of privacy concerns are going to be made to allow privacy in our dwellings. So when they said that they all went out to the back of the garage, I thought I should let you know. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillum. Would the developer like to respond to that, specifically to the issue of privacy and how they will be impacted during the construction and afterwards?
Certainly. Mr. Mayor and City Council, I'll respond to all the comments that I heard made. To start off with, as it relates to the neighbors to the north, yes, we will have mature landscaping on that north side, but we would also be happy to meet with them, to sit down with them, and if they have ideas or if they think additional landscaping would be warranted, we would be happy to do that. That property to the north of us is zoned multifamily. It is our 2250, and as mentioned earlier today, you have a real mix of different buildings there. You do have single-family houses, you have multifamily duplexes, and you have very large apartment buildings as well, all in that northern part adjacent to our site. As it relates to the traffic island, Once again, as Mr. Ochoa pointed out, we would defer to the city staff. So if it is a good idea for us to incorporate that piece into our project, we would be happy to do so. If it is not, and Traffic or Public Works decides otherwise, that's fine with us. Our project can stand alone on its own. As it relates to the value of the property, our parking lot, our property next door or north being impacted, this project will actually increase the value of the property in the area. Directly adjacent to those properties right now is a parking lot and a large loading dock that is used by Office Depot. So those impactful items will go away. This will actually be a significant improvement to what's currently out there right now, just not from an aesthetic perspective, but also from a use perspective. That concludes our remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. And the last speaker, I hope last, is Dan Harmon. Please state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Dan Harmon. I'm a staff member at the church across the street. And I think our concern is just the parking available on Broadway. I wasn't sure from the drawing, is the street parking that's currently there next to Office Depot going to remain in the new development, or is it all going to be red zoned? Our church members park on our site, but they also use the street parking on Broadway. And so we wanted to inquire of that and see what the status of that with the new project is.
Thank you. Mr. Ochoa?
And my understanding is that that's to remain public parking.
There
Is
you
that
go.
right, Mr. Agani? Yeah.
There's no proposal to change the parking configuration on the street at this moment, and staff is not recommending any.
Especially as there is commercial ground floor retail, it makes sense to keep that as free-flowing parking for the general vicinity.
Okay, very well. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Weaver?
There's a lot of commercial parking within this project at ground level. If the commercial's not open some days, like Sunday or whatever, maybe the developer allow parking for the church in there. It's just working together.
I have no questions. Close the public comments, public hearing, and I'd like to go first. Mr. Nigerian?
I'll go first. This is a stage one. Does design review board get a
No, so this is,
bite at this?
They're looking at us.
because it's part of the San Fernando corridor, you are the design review.
I'm not against design review board taking a look at something like this, though, to be quite honest with you.
It's really up to the City Council to decide for future the projects if you would like to change the policy. However, we don't want to add layers of review for the applicants because the council is the highest review authority. If the council would like us to revisit the idea of taking certain projects that you see regularly to the DRB instead, we could do that as a zoning code amendment in the future. But to add another design review level hearing to the applicants, we think might be a little bit excessive.
Okay. As long as you're up there. Is this project going to be paying the lower park and library impact fees? Or
they are a qualified project as a pipeline project as they submitted considerably earlier before the deadline for the projects to file an application, and it was deemed complete several days prior to the deadline.
Several weeks, I believe.
Sorry?
Several weeks, I believe.
Several weeks actually, yes.
And so this is stage one review, which is the
Correct.
more broad design discussion, if you will. So will there be an EIR for this thing at some point?
There will be environmental review, complete environmental review for the second stage 2 design.
Okay, so that's usually where I like to dig in. So I'll refrain from any of that and reserve my comments. But in terms of just a couple things, with regard to that, is it a lamb chop?
Pork chop, sir.
Pork chop.
I think we can expect increasing traffic generally throughout that area, and I would be opposed to any modification which would narrow that. I believe this is a southbound direction on Pacific. So I know traffic we'll have some input on that. But generally speaking, I think the more lanes, turn lanes that we have available or through lanes, the better, even if it is at the expense of a smaller public plaza on the outside. And the last comment is, it looks like there's 4 different designs on this building as I look through the elevations. Am I wrong in seeing that?
I'm going to ask Mr. Platt to come and answer this. The project has different faces facing different urban settings, and I think they're adjusting accordingly.
Because I like one of them. I like one more than others. I like the south elevation, which is probably least common in the other elevations. I mean, that could almost be something on Orange or something on Central or any of the other buildings that we have. But the southern elevation,
the one facing Broadway,
appears to be more. Is it more glass or more?
It has more vertical breaks, which we thought was necessary just because of the sheer length of that facade. When we worked with the architectural team, we recognized and applauded that they were looking at how these facades relate to the uses and widths and just general appearance of the streets that they face onto. So when we're on Kenilworth, where we have a very small residential street, we have the ground floor units that are accessed from the street, and we have more of a residential scale, more of a kind of a broken down feeling. On Broadway, we have the vertical recesses that create a rhythm across the facade that help break up the sheer length of that wall. And then facing onto Pacific, we thought it was important to, they emphasized there's a common kind of a gym area, recreation room that you see on the second floor. So they created kind of a frame around that room with a lot of glass in it. That's probably the main thing that gives that facade a different look. And we thought it was appropriate to express that interior use outside of the building. In addition, we feel that the facades are unified by the consistent material palette and the general sensibility of how the balconies are placed, how the materials are used, the relationships between the various volumes.
Okay, I don't know, call me old-fashioned, but I like to see a building, have the generally the same design from 4 sides, and the use of material. Can we get the south elevation? I was looking for it in my packet here.
Let's see. Okay, let's.
I mean, that seems a little more sleeker and.
Okay, so this is the Kenilworth elevation on the west facade, and you can see here the ground floor units that kind of create that more residentially scaled base of the building, and we thought it was appropriate to have this facade emphasize that aspect. This is the rear elevation, which I don't think you're addressing.
Yeah, no, I'm not crazy about that.
This is the Pacific elevation. This is the frame around that kind of common recreation room that I mentioned. And I think through the balconies, the rhythm of the balconies, and the ins and outs of the facade, this does relate to the front facade. What it doesn't have is the kind of vertical emphasis that the facade on Broadway has.
So where's the south?
Let me get over to that. Here you are. And so here you have these ins and outs, these vertical recesses with balconies, these areas clad with the metal, or I guess that's metal cladding in those locations.
Those are all the balconies.
And this was probably the hardest facade to detail just because of the length of the building, how important it was to avoid having this kind of overwhelming, looming presence. And we thought they successfully addressed that through this use of materials and changes of plane.
So those are all, and you know what? On a tangent, in relation to balconies, I saw on Central, on the Lex on Orange, someone hanging their laundry out over the balcony. Is that permitted? Do we have a code on that, or what?
I don't think so.
I'm not kidding you, and I was really upset by that.
We actually we can put a condition that they put in their lease agreements, a provision that is not allowed. And I believe we have done that in the downtown projects. We can take a look on Lex and Orange.
Code enforcement.
Okay. So you're saying that the different although they're different, they incorporate some of the same materials, and that doesn't bother you?
No, because the material palette kind of...
If it bothered you, you would say something.
We wrote a nice report for you saying that we support the project. We think it's actually a very thoughtful design, and we think buildings should respond to their immediate context with subtle changes. Maybe this isn't subtle enough for what you're hoping for, but we thought it was successful.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Jerry, Mr. Quintero?
Yeah, I support the project. I also was right around the corner near the Home Minutemen office for many years, so I'm very familiar with the site. I remember when it was a grocery store, and within that grocery store was a La Majun place that I went to, and would always try to talk him into going statewide with his wares, but he never did. So I think this is an upgrade. I like the design. I like the fact that there's quite a bit of commercial. I think that site will absolutely support the commercial. And if you can get a restaurant in there, one, I think the restaurant will do very well, and it's certainly going to improve the ambiance in the neighborhood. I am concerned, however, with the pork chop. Whatever gets done, I think you need to be able to have that right turn on Pacific Avenue continue to exist and make a sort of a high flow of traffic. What I noticed throughout the years is that there's a lot of people that come south on Pacific, turn left to Broadway. I assume they're heading towards the Galleria. And that left turn lane is not very long, maybe 3 or 4 cars. So right away you start to have a backup. So I do think that's something that's important for the overall traffic flow in the city. But I know the developer's work in Pasadena. He's created some excellent buildings, including rehabs that he's done and readaptive use. So I'm sure whatever he builds here will be the highest quality.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver?
Yeah, I was just looking at the pork chop or the lamb chop on Google. It's better than on the plans. And you can see where the tires are and everything, the people making it. But if you moved it, I don't know, you're adjusting the building to make a dedicated right turn lane, and then incorporate the remainder into the project, because the triangular area that there is just wasted for cars. You don't need it, in my view, looking at the map. Anyhow, this is a conceptual plan, stage 1, so I know there will be things that will be adjusted by the developer and by staff. I believe strongly that the corner of Pacific and Broadway is a signature corner, similar to what we have seen in the Triangle Project on South Brand and a few other locations, the one up Central at the off-ramp. And we've asked the developers to make sure that that corner, that kind of a corner, stands out. Maybe it can use some more tinkering. I don't know. We don't know yet about LEED. Is it going to be a solar heated pool? I can't tell too much about what's on the roof in terms of what I heard. I do think you should meet with all the residents and explain things away. Looking at the map, the garages I see are right up against the back. It is stepped up to give that horizontal distance away. As I said, on one on Colorado, people living north of this building will have a much quieter environment, because you're going to be buffered from the noise off of Broadway. You're not going to hear that noise anymore. So that's one advantage you'll get out of that. You get more shade from the summer sun, which would be lower in the winter. You'll have more shade there, which probably would work good for you. again, that's it. I know it's a phase one, and there's more to do, the environmental document, whatever. So I'll be interested in seeing what they come back with, or it's a stage two. Either you do make some adjustments, whatever, or flip a coin and hope you get it. So, but I do know this architect, and he's doing another great job out on Glen Oaks. He's done great projects in Pasadena, so I think I'll be supporting it at stage two also. Excuse me, I'm done.
Thank you.
Sure. I've been saying this a lot for the public's benefit so that they understand what we're doing here. We're approving a stage one design. It'll come back for design. We are not approving density. That's not something that we have the ability to approve. The zoning is what it is. All we can look at is the design. And I think this design is fine. I do think for the neighbors' benefit, the neighbors to the north, that they've really done more to step this building back from your properties than we've seen in most of our projects. I don't know exactly where your house is and your garage and all of that and what the sight line will be, but just looking at the elevations they provided, my guess is that probably for most of your homes, when you're going to see the top of their building sort of in the distance, it's not going to be towering above you because it's 1 story, then 2 stories, then 3 stories. So you'll have that sight line going up, and their patios facing the back. I would ask the developer, I don't know how large those patios are, but to consider building in some green space on at least some of them, so when the residents look up, assuming they can see the building at all past their garages, and I'm not even sure they can, but when they look up, they actually see greenery going up that building and not just building material. So if that's possible, that would be nice for your tenants, but super nice for the neighbors in the back. Now, I can't say whether it's going to be better for you or not. I don't live there. You're living there. I do know that Home Depot, I used to go there quite a bit in that parking lot, and there was a lot of noise, a lot of heat generated off all of that pavement. Right now it's very blighted. I don't know what happens there at night, if anything, but it's certainly an attractive nuisance. It could be. No, sorry, we can't do a dialogue back and forth. You're not on, you can't be heard by the public, so we can't do that. But I do think that this could be something that's nicer than what you had. I know it's much lower. The Home Depot was lower, so you would see over it. Sorry, I keep saying Home Depot. It's not Home Depot. That would have been much worse. Office Depot. Now instead of having all of that traffic going in and out all day and all of that exhaust from all of those cars, you're not going to have that. And they are offering to do screening for you, and so you should take advantage before they even leave to get Mr. Khan's card and sit down and take them up on that. And hopefully when they come back for their stage 2, you can come back and hopefully say to us, we like the trees they're willing to plant, we think this will be good, and we're okay with that. That's what I hope. But I do see that they're stepping the building back quite a bit. So you're not going to have a monolithic, tall thing rising up behind you. It's going to kind of step back like a mountain steps back. So I do, and I think the green space on the patios, if you can do that, would help a lot in terms of the way the building looks from the north, as well as look nice for yours. If you can do something about that pork chop shape and get more space for the sidewalk, it would be really wonderful to see green space in the front of this building, more public amenities, more seating for the public, more green space on that corner, on Pacific and on Broadway. That's something that I don't see in your project. That would be nice to have some place where you have some relief from the street, some green space, some foliage. In the stage 2, I'll be looking for that. I agree with the staff recommendations, and I would suggest that whatever motion we make, we include the staff recommendations for this project. And Mr. Najarian's suggestion of sending some of these projects to DRB, I think we should discuss a code change, not for the downtown necessarily, but for the orphan areas from the old redevelopment agencies, and start sending those to DRB instead of to us. Not that I don't like seeing the projects, but they're professionals on DRB, and we get great advice from our urban design team. But I might feel more comfortable having these projects go in front of our DRBs instead of in front of us. So I would like to see that agendized at some point. Those are my comments.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Something that we didn't ask the applicant is the conditions that are suggested, are you okay with them? 3 of them say consider. No, 4 say consider. Doesn't say you have to. Just somebody say it for the record, so.
Councilman Weaver, yes. We
will consider.
We will consider them. Thank you.
Make sure.
Thank you. And I support this project at this location. I mean, I do have some reservations in terms of one of the residents made a comment that they had very short notice. I don't want to get into how much notice they got and so on and so forth, but just in general terms, I hope there is sufficient interaction between the developer and those residents that are going to be impacted. To the extent that the city needs to be involved in that, that should also be the case. The EIR, I expect, will fully address the impact on these neighboring residences as well as the impact in general. And I like I'm sort of split between whether I like the design or not. I like the design as it's presented in the materials, but when I look at that photo, all I see is Lex on orange. I don't know if it's only me or not, but it looks a little too much like Lex on orange. I don't know if maybe it's just the perception of this specific photo.
It's a concept.
Yeah,
it hasn't been refined.
But otherwise. Where, do you want to go to the first
I'm
one?
trying to get to the corner shot.
Yeah, this doesn't look like Lex on orange, but that other photo did. So, Lex on orange, no. This photo, yes. That kind of a thing. And I do join in Councilmember Friedman's comments about green space, more green to the extent it's possible. Obviously, that you have to work with what you have, but just something to consider for stage 2. And this will get into the nitty-gritty of it when stage 2 approval comes around. So, does anyone have a motion?
I'll move 3A.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members: Friedman?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian?
Yes. Thank you. And next item.
Next item on this agenda is closed session. 4A is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to paragraph 4 of subdivision D of Government Code section 54956.91 case. B is public employment attorney. C is conference with labor negotiators. C designated negotiators attending closed sessions are Scott Ochoa, John Tocatalian, Michael Garcia, Jillian Van Meiden, Matt Doyle, Robert Castro, Carl Povolitis, Steve Zern, Ramona Boeg, and Robert Elliott. The names of the employee organizations are
Quiet in
Glendale
the chambers,
City
please.
Employees Association, Glendale Management Association, Glendale Police Officers Association, IBW, Local 18, Unit 40.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Garcia, do you expect to report on any of these?
Mr. Mayor, on item 4B, we anticipate reporting on.
And where are we going to meet?
We're going to meet behind
Behind the little room? Okay.
Recess.
Okay. Recess.